Welcome back to the video. This is day 10, the Bible in a year. We are on Job 24 through 28. And we're just going to go through it. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about there's this article. We talked about it a couple videos ago. Knowing Scripture. This is from knowingscripture.com by Daniel Hoffman. I'm going to read from this article that he wrote, and I'll try to link it into the description so that you can check it out yourself. But we did a video where we briefly talked about the problem of evil, and we looked at some material by Dr. William Lane Craig, and that seemed to be well received. So we'll look at this Daniel Hoffman article about the problem of evil as it relates to Job, because it's kind of central to the whole thing. We'll get to that at the end. We are on the third round of sort of arguments back and forth between Job and his three friends, and everything's kind of breaking down here, and we're getting to the ultimate conclusion of the book of Job, which will be when God arrives to answer Job, which is one of my favorite parts of the entire Bible. Like 38 to the end is incredible. So let's see. Let's back up to 23. So this is Job replies. He went over in 21 how the wicked seem to prosper, and then he gets a retort from Eliphaz, and then he replies back. So Job replies, "Where is God?" Now we're in 24. Why are not times of judgment kept by the Almighty, and why do those who know him never see his days? Some have landmarks. They seize flocks and pasture them. They drive away the donkey of the fatherless, and they take the widow of the ox for a pledge. They trust. So he's going over all these things that happen. Moving down to 12, he's just a list of things. From out of the city, the dying groan, and the soul of the wounded cries for help. Yet God charges no one with wrong. Adding to what he said a few chapters before, where the wicked prosper. And he continues, there are those who rebel against the light. The womb forgets them. The worm finds them sweet. They are no longer remembered. So wickedness is broken like a tree. And he just goes over all these things that they wrong. They are exalted a little while and then are gone. They are brought low and gathered up like all the others. They are cut off like the heads of grain. If it is not so, who will prove me a liar and show me that there is nothing in what I say? So Bildad speaks up. He's going to talk about how man can't be righteous. And he really hits on a couple of good things here that's going to tie us into the Daniel Hoffman article. Bildad says, dominion and fear are with God. He makes peace in his high heaven. Is there any number to his armies? Upon whom does his light not arise? Behold, skipping down to 5, behold, even the moon is not bright, and the stars are not pure in his eyes. How much less man, who is a maggot, and not the son of man, who is a worm? Just saying how little man is compared to God, which is correct. You know, God is omniscient, all-powerful, timeless, spaceless, uncreated creator. Who are we? And Job will actually encounter this answer. Who are you, O man, to answer to God? Job replies, God's majesty is unsearchable, which there's a lot of truth here. And this is really great scripture here, looking at verse 2. How have you helped him who has no power? How you have saved the arm that has no strength? How you have counseled him who has no wisdom? The plentiful declared sound knowledge. With whose help have you uttered words? Whose breath has come out from you? The dead tremble under the waters of their inhabitants. Sheol, the place of the dead, is naked before God, and abandoned has no covering. You know, just the greatness of God. The pillars of heaven tremble and are astonished at his rebuke, the rebuke of God. By his power he stilled the sea. By his understanding shattered Rahab. By the wind and the heavens were made fair. You know, he says, just talking about the majesty and the glory of God. Behold, those are built the outskirts of his ways. These are built the outskirts of his ways. And how small a whisper do we hear him? But the thunder of his power, who can understand? Job continues that he's going to maintain his integrity, that he has not sinned. Remember, his friends are assuming he has sinned, even though he knows he's not. As God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter as long as my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. My lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right, talking to his friends, that he has sinned. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I am righteous. I haven't done anything wrong, but yet I'm still suffering, is his argument here. I hold fast my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days. Let's skip down to 28. This is our final chapter for the day's reading, and this is day 10. Job's going on for a few chapters here. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they have refined. Iron is taken out of the earth, copper is smelted for ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches out the farthest limit, the ore in gloom and deep darkness. He opens shafts in a valley away from where anyone lives. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang in the air, far away from mankind. They swing to and fro. So talking about these great things that man does, but ultimately they're futile. That path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. The proud beast have not trodden on it. And then we get to 9. Man puts his hands to flinty rocks, overturns mountains and roots. He cuts out channels from the rock. So all these great things that man can do, the wisdom of man. And then you get to 12. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? It's not in what man has accomplished. It's not in what man decides is sinful versus righteous. It's all about the character of God. It cannot be bought for gold. Silver cannot be weighed by its price. It cannot be valued by gold. Gold and glass cannot equal it. So Job is talking about the majesty of God and God's wisdom. 23, God understands the way of it. He knows its place, for he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and appointed the waters by measure, glorifying God in all that he is describing God doing. And he said to man, God says to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil is understanding. The next chapter on day 11, we'll talk about Job's defense, and we will go all the way, I believe, to 28. So, or I'm sorry, not 28, 31. We'll go 29 to 31 on day 11's reading. And Job's going to give his defense, and things are really, really heating up here. We're kind of dialing these arguments down to where they need to be. All right, let's talk a little bit about this David Hoffman article. Again, I'll try to put that link in the description. He writes at the beginning, if I wanted to start this article with a sickening story of abuse by from local news, it would have been depressingly quick and easy to find one. So evil is all around. And then the second paragraph here, the problem of evil is one of the great challenges to the Christian faith. And again, in my last video about this, it's the thing I've encountered most that causes people either not to fully commit to Christ or to down the road when they encounter true terrible things or true hard things, they can't reconcile that with their faith. And I'm here to tell you there are answers to this and really good, deep, philosophical, theological, personal answers to this that are absolutely satisfying. So don't let the problem of evil scare you away. That's really giving in to the problem of evil. And we need to lean into Christ who has overcome evil and saved the lost sinner. So the problem is that according to the biblical witness, problem of evil, God is both benevolent and omnipotent, meaning he's good and all powerful, yet the world is full of evil. And these three facts are hard to reconcile. Evil is everywhere and is very real, yet we affirm that God has the power to stop it and that he is good, but he hasn't stopped it from our estimation. So he goes on to talk about most Christians know the story of Job, which we're going through, of course. And in the opening chapters, sorry, we have a bell going. In the opening chapters, Job's godliness is emphasized. He's blameless and upright. And so then Satan attacks Job, is given freedom to attack Job. Then Job, three friends who we've been going back and forth. We're in the middle of about to be in their third arguments here. Job's three friends assume he is suffering for sin, and they make continual accusations against him. But Job's friends get rebuked. They get corrected in the end. Their accusations are wrong. All of this is suggesting that we're not dealing with the problem of suffering and evil in the world, that we can't deal with the problem of suffering and evil in the world by simply saying everyone has sinned. So everyone sinned, so that's why everyone suffers. To brush off the problem of evil by saying that all of us deserve a judgment, um, we all deserve judgment anyway, does not really get to the heart of the problem that Job is wrestling with in the chapters we've been covering and that we will cover. And so Daniel Hoffman presents 5 things that could be said about the problem of evil and suffering through the book of Job. And his first argument is that it is important that to understand that Job doesn't know about God and Satan's interactions in chapter 1 and 2. He's never told about them. So beyond Job's perception in his understanding, things are happening for reasons that he's unaware of. So that's important to understand. And then second, he mentions that we should not feel pressure to sort of like as the reader and as maybe you're the Christian reading it, to get God off the hook, to explain away evil and suffering in a different way that doesn't involve God sort of there at the epicenter of our solution. Job's 3 friends continually highlight God's power and his overwhelming judgment. They keep trying to make the point that what has happened to Job is God's doing. They're wasting their breath because Job knows all of this. And he says in chapter 12, Job, I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know such things as these? As the beasts, and they will teach you, the birds of the heavens, and they will teach you, who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this. So we know that God is here and responsible. Job maintains his hope, though. Well, let's talk about God first. In 13, Job says, I would speak to the Almighty. I desire to argue my case with God. As for you, you are whitewashed with lies, worthless physicians, all of you. Oh, that you would keep silent, and it would be your wisdom. Will you speak falsely for God and speak deceitfully? Job maintains that his hope that God can indeed speak for himself and does not need human speculation and ingenuity to justify the ways of God. Job was right to shun the simplistic answers of his friends. And so when evil happens, we need to understand, who is in charge of all things, who is sovereign. And then, so what that leads us to do is to wrestle honestly with the problem of evil, not just run, not just bury our head in the sand. The third point that Daniel Hoffman makes is, in the end, God does eventually restore Job in chapter 42. The end of Job, this is from James, kind of a pullout from James chapter 5. The end of Job keeps us from concluding that God is simply malicious. So because he is restored, we can't just draw the conclusion as like the atheist might want to do that God is a cruel, unkind, malicious God. We can't pull that out of Job because he is restored. Now, this doesn't answer the problem of evil, but it at least provides hope that appeal to God for vindication is not a pointless exercise, that we can cry out to God in our times of trouble and hurt, and that God is faithful to answer those. The fourth point Daniel Hoffman makes is that looking back, sort of in the post-Christian view of things, the hope that Job expresses, and it's really astonishing. In the course of the story, Job expresses certain hopes that together make a really compelling case that whatever rational solution to the problem of evil that we can come up with, God is indeed doing something about evil. In chapter 7, Job raises the question of why God concerns himself with humans at all. In Psalm 8, the psalmist raises the same question, what is man that you are mindful of him? The psalmist asks this in worship. Job asks in despair, what is man that you make so much of him and that you set your heart on him, visit him every morning and test him every moment? If I sin, what do I do to you, you watcher of mankind? Think about it. Do we consider ourselves with the doings of insects? Yet God is higher. We don't, all that to say, we don't really concern ourselves with what the ants are doing, right? We don't pay attention to them. We trod on them without a care in the world, right? So why does God care if we sin? He's so much higher than us. He's beyond us. God is higher than us, than we are above him. Why does he care? Job wonders why. If he is being punished for something, even why does God even bother to do this? Then he says, why do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? Job wishes that God would just pardon any sin he may have done with. Right? Now, this is key to Christian theology, is that God doesn't just get rid of sin. There is a just and specific punishment for sin. And this is important because God is not just all powerful, all knowing, timeless, spaceless, immaterial, creator of all things, but God is also perfectly just. And for man to sin against a holy God, and then God just to say, oh, I'm going to forget about it and I don't worry about it, is not justice. So God must do justice. In chapter 9 of Job, Job despairs over the lack of a mediator between God and himself. We've talked about this quite a bit in the previous videos. There is no arbiter between us who might put his hand on both. How can Job face God and make his case in court or otherwise without a mediator? To Job's knowledge, there is no such mediator. This thought is intensified in chapter 10, where Job questions God's ability to sympathize with Job's sufferings and weakness. Have you eyes of flesh? Do you see as man sees? Are your days as the days of man? Are your years as man's years? So, sorry, there goes the light again. Hang on. We got to get that we got to get that fixed up. Um, do you see as man sees? Do you know man's weakness? Who can sympathize with the human perspective? And on this side of the cross, we know, well, God enters down into his creation and becomes man. He becomes the God man. We call this the hypostatic union, that Jesus is 100% God and 100% man. And he enters down into our world and experiences everything that we experience. Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, Jesus goes through all the hardships and more that Job would have went through and that all of us went through. And he carries all of that to the cross. So it's not that the problem of evil isn't answered or taken care of. It's that a timeless, spaceless creator of all things, God, has taken care of it. It's just that we are in the finite world, limited between our life and death for now. But God is beginning from end. And he has taken care of the hurts, the pains. He's answered the problem of evil with his own blood. And that's the gospel. So the fifth point that Daniel Hoffman makes, and we'll close this video out, in God's response to Job at the end of the book, so we're not there yet, but we will get there. This is chapter 38 through 41, my favorite part. Job and us are reminded that we are not the center of the universe. It's not our story. From cover to cover, the Bible has one good guy, one main character, and it is Jesus. And we are not the main character. We are just the ones that God loves, that God calls, that God saves. But the heroic story is that God himself enters into creation, saves sinful man, is the answer to the problem of evil that God did not create. God didn't create evil. That was our doing when we disobeyed. We chose the not good thing and we chose the thing to serve ourselves, which is the bad thing. So here's what Hoffman writes. We wonder about the problem of evil, but perhaps we should consider that not everything is about us and our wonderings to begin with. God does not explain to Job why he suffered. He tells him nothing of Satan or allowing Satan to test him. Instead, God asks Job if he can present at creation if he was present at creation, if he has been to the bottom of the ocean, if he can play with stars, if he can send rain or lightning, if he observes the life cycle of mountain goats high on the hills, or tells eagles when to take off and fly, and so on. The effect is to remind Job that he is only one part of a very small part of creation. His sufferings and his questions and concerns cannot place him at the center stage or change the reality that much of creation and what God does with it simply exists for God's own sake and has nothing to do with man. Connecting this to point one, Satan's role in Job's story, much of the creation may in fact be not for our sake, but for the sake of the angels in heaven who are watching. There is a spiritual world that we need to be aware of. Paul seems to think precisely this in 1 Corinthians 3:9 when he writes, "For I think that Christ has exhibited us apostles at last of all, like men sentenced to death, because we have become a spectacle to the world, to angels and to men." He says something similar in Ephesians 3. And this is Daniel Hoffman's conclusion. Neither the book of Job nor the rest of the Bible explain why God allows evil in the world and how it is ultimately consistent with his goodness and power. It clearly does not explain it in any simple or complete way, but Job at least reminds us that we do not know everything, that God is not blind to evil and is doing much in response to it, namely Christ on the cross, that at the end of the day, it may not even be about us, and we may have to trust him with that reality. Moreover, he does not expect us to explain away or rationalize suffering and evil. And so Daniel Hoffman writes in conclusion to this article about evil and suffering in Job. The story of Job is not concerned so much to tell us that God is just, and it is not so concerned to provide a rational explanation for the existence of evil and suffering. What it is concerned to tell us is that God is God, and we are not, and that Job was not wrong to trust in him. And then through the rest of the Bible, you learn that God is righteous and good and benevolent to the point of sending Christ, God himself in the flesh, to die on the cross for sinners, not because we loved him and not because we are righteous, but because he first loved us. And that's Job. That's day 10. And that's my thoughts on the problem of evil. Comment in the comment section if you've got something to say about it, and we will continue the discussion. We'll see you next time.